Hello YouTube, pardon the extremely dirty room here. I'm going to give you the most in-depth tutorial on how to make your own cassettes at home, because I've noticed that a lot of tutorials on YouTube are kind of vague and don't go into very specific details on how to do your first cassette release or something along the lines of that. Now, cassettes are on the rise. They aren't quite as profitable as things like vinyl records or CDs, because you can make CDs super cheap and you can sell vinyl for a pretty hefty price and make a nice profit off of it. Cassettes are a nice in-between, but they're not going to be the most profitable in the end. They are just a really nice release that you can have for somewhat cheap. That being said, I have made 2 releases myself on my record label, one being a little bit better in quality, the second one obviously than the first one, and I'm going to show you what mistakes I made on the first one and how you can improve your releases. But first, I'm going to go over the very basics and show you where you need to get your start. First thing you need to do is buy a tape deck. Do not buy some cheapo thing you find on Amazon that can hold a cassette and you think maybe this will be good. No, I guarantee you it's going to give you that crappy 90s people making their mixtapes by putting in a cassette and then recording through the microphone of the tape recorder. It is not going to give you a good product in the end. I have this wonderful little tape deck here. It's not obviously the most top of the line thing in the universe, but it is very good. It's the Technics RST17. The most important thing you're going to want out of your tape deck, hands down, is this thing, right aside from a recording feature, is this thing right here, Dolby NR. That is Dolby noise reduction. It will reduce so much static that you hear with your tapes, and I'll show you a before and after right now. You can find a tape deck pretty cheap. I got this on eBay for about 50 bucks, which is pretty good. I also bought the service manual, just in case, which I found on on eBay as well for like 10 bucks. But that is absolutely not necessary. There's a good chance that you'll be able to work around your tape deck if you have any experience with any kind of hardware. They're pretty self-explanatory. I just needed it because there were very few tutorials on the internet, and now that I'm giving you this tutorial, hopefully it will clear up the need for you to need something like that manual. So once you have your tape deck, you're going to get your cassettes. No, that's not what you want to do yet. Without a way to connect this to an audio source, you're not going to be able to record any cassettes. So I have an audio interface right here, but that is only for streaming. You actually don't need one for recording cassettes. As you can see back here, I've got a few cords plugged into the back of this, which run into the back of my computer, which is very hectic. Please don't insult me on my setup in the comments. Many tape decks require different things, but this one is a pretty simple left-right VBR audio, I believe it's called, to a couple of headphone jacks right here. So all you need to do is have, if you're using one like I am, which I highly recommend, you need 2 sets of these cords, one plugging into the input section of your computer, which is, let me see if I can get a little closer. Blue is the input. It is like the microphone jack. You're going to take the output of this tape deck, which you can see right over here, line out. You're going to take the line out and plug it into the blue one. The green one you're going to plug into the line in. It's basically the headphone jack. That's why I highly recommend having something like a digital audio interface, so that way you can actually still listen to things while you have this plugged into your tape deck. If anybody wants a tutorial on how to set up a virtual audio interface so you can do things like this, just let me know. Once you've got that all set up, it is time for you to buy your tapes. People use a lot of different ways to obtain blank tapes in terms of the people they buy them from. You can use duplication.ca like some people use. You can use tapeline.info, you can use the nationalaudiocompany.com, you can use Delta Media. There's a lot of different websites where you can get blank tapes. I've used Delta Media for these 2, but I'm probably going to shop around for different ones because I wasn't 100% happy with these ones. But in the end, wherever you buy from, you will get cassettes. These are tab out type cassettes, meaning that they have these holes here that prevent people from accidentally writing over their releases. And if you have a tape deck that's meant for a consumer like I do, that means you're not going to be able to record over these until you put some tape over the holes. It's a pretty simple thing. Once you put tape over these holes, the right protection is basically moot and you can record over them and it's no big deal. There's also different kinds of tapes. You can see from this one that there are screws on it, and you can see on this one that there are no screws on it. This one is welded shut, this one is screwed shut. That's going to make a difference if you want to splice your audio, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. Most importantly, make sure you get a little bit more audio than you need. If you need If your album is like 26, maybe 25 minutes and 50 seconds, don't get tapes with 26 minutes on it, or else you'll end up with tapes that are too short, like this one. Get an extra 15-30 seconds on there just to be safe. It is much better to get tapes that are longer than shorter. Please believe me on that. They also sell these on Amazon for pretty cheap. These really aren't meant for a record label of any kind. These are mostly meant for personal use, like people that are recording lectures or like court proceedings or making mixtapes, that sort of thing. You can tell they're meant for personal use and not record label use because they don't even have any holes here. They're kind of like sealed up, so that way you can immediately record over these at home and nobody has to call to the company and complain that they can't record over it when all they have to do is put some tape over the holes. But if you are buying tapes like these and you're making a mixtape at home, that's fine. If you want to just make a little present for somebody, that's cool, but it has to come on a very specific amount of time. These ones are usually just 60 minutes, and if they're 60 minutes and you only have 54 minutes of songs, or 58, or however close you can get, you're going to have so much leftover space, and then you're going to want to splice your audio, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. But either way, once you've bought those, you're going to need cases. You're going to want these Norelco cases. They're pretty cheap. They're $1 or less per case if you're buying from somewhere like Amazon, which I highly recommend, because these are good cases. They're not like the greatest cases in the world, but they're cheap and they're good. Do not buy these Evolance 25 pack tapes. They are horrible. Some of them won't even close. They're all sharp and they're not any smooth on the edges at all. Horrible tapes. Please do not buy those. Buy the Norelco ones, or what? Norelco, I don't even know, is Norelco a brand name? Another thing you're going to want to need is you're going to want to know what design you're going to go for on the cassettes. You can obviously opt for a completely blank thing right here, but then people won't know which side is side A or side B, or if there is even a side A or side B, or if you just put the full album on both sides. Some people just write it, and there's no harm in it, but it's not super pretty. You can do some sort of creative design like this I did on my first thing, where I took a reverse stencil and I flicked paint onto it like that, or you can go for a sticker label, which you can get for pretty cheap. They ship them to you here in these sheets of stickers that you can just print onto there at a printing shop. You're also going to need to decide on the album artwork, because obviously this is not one-to-one. Things like CDs or records are very easy to get your album cover on because it's already one-to-one, and that's the absolute standard for pretty much every single album ever released. There are several ways of going about modifying these to fit on this kind of ratio. You can make alternate album artwork, you can modify the original artwork, you can just simply move it into the frame, such as this one, where you just have kind of the album artwork there and some empty space at the bottom, but it still kind of works because it's all black and it works really well. And then there are bad ways of modifying your album artwork, such as these three. Now with this one, it's kind of obvious that it's just been squished down. You can see here that it was originally a square and they just kind of squished it to fit here, and it doesn't look terrible, it just looks kind of wonky because it has been squished. Here you can see it hasn't been squished, but it's been stretched in a very awkward kind of way. The proportions are all messed up. Here was the original album artwork. As you can see, it's just been stretched in a very strange way to work. And here's this one, which is actually a bootleg cassette. It's clearly been poorly photoshopped with like MS Paint kind of cropping to make it all fit into one thing. And it's not horrible, but it's definitely not great. It's clearly been like Xeroxed or photocopied poorly. But either way, now you have all your material. No, you don't. No, you don't. You need to know what you're going to print these things on. I use Hammermill Premium Laser Gloss Color Paper. I bring this to FedEx and they print the things out and they look pretty fine. You can, of course, print these at home if you really, truly need to, but ink is expensive and also it just doesn't quite look right sometimes. It looks a little bit cheap. Now you have all the materials. Kind of. If you want to mail these cassettes out, you're going to need some packing material. I use these. They're very good and they fit very well. You can just look for bubble mailers online. I believe these are just 4x10, which are super nice and they fit a single cassette. You're also going to need a storefront to set this stuff up on. You can use Bandcamp if you're selling it on your own artist page, but I believe that costs money. I use Store Envy because it doesn't cost anything. And of course, you could just like sell them yourself on PayPal or in person. Now, how do you record a cassette? That's what you need to know. Firstly, of course, like I said earlier, if you have these holes, you're going to need to tape them up with Scotch tape. Now that I've done that, you need to know what side is the right side. The tape will play from the left and move to the right, depending on obviously what side you have it inserted. If it's inserted like this, then that means that this is the side that it's going to play. You're going to need a program to do this in. I use Audacity because it does exactly what you need it to do. Now, just for simplicity's sake, let's pretend like we're going to do a release for this artist right here. You're going to want to take your audio, drop it into Audacity. Then you're going to want to put these into 2 little channels. Grab the first one, cut it, put it up here. You're going to want to split these as evenly as possible. Obviously, this is the most even way we can split it with the track list still being consistent. So essentially, this is going to function up here as our A side of the cassette, and this down here is going to function as our B side of the cassette. Some people don't do it this way. Some people will just put the entire thing on one side of the cassette and then flip it over and record the same thing on the other side. But personally, I like doing a side A and a side B because it's less tape and it's easier to find tracks. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your speakers here are set up to go into the line in of the tape deck, so that way when it records onto the tape it gets audio on there actually. So test that out a little bit. The way you will set one of these up is you'll hit pause, you'll record arm it. Some cassette decks will require you to hit record and play at the same time. This one, when you just press record, it'll automatically push play for you, so just know what your hardware is. An important thing you need to know when making cassettes is that not all of the tape in a cassette is recordable. The first 5 to 10 seconds really is clear tape that you cannot record on. It's just meant to hold the tape to the spool that turns. So what you're going to want to do is click on this little tool or something along the lines of that and give yourself about 8 seconds of empty space at the beginning. If you're short on the amount of tape that you have, you can obviously make it whatever, as long as you can test the cassette and make sure that everything is getting recorded onto it. You will need to solo the side you want to record. I'm going to be recording side A. You're going to unpause this and hit play on here. Now it'll take a few seconds before it gets started, but once it does, you should see that audio is coming out of there like that, but you also need to make sure that audio is coming into there like that. Now every release is a little bit different. You're going to want to configure it to where it peaks right around there. Now obviously, once you have recorded your audio onto this tape as a test, you're going to want to make sure that you are actually getting audio to your computer. So you're going to put it back in, to which you can see that it is coming out here with my audio interface, just to make sure that you are indeed getting the sound to your computer so you can test it. If you can't test your audio, you're probably not going to have a very good outcome. Now for the hell of it, I'm going to show you how to splice an audio cassette. If you have a bunch of extra space and you don't want to have extra space, you're going to want to do this. You're going to want to let it play for about 5, 6 to 7 seconds once the actual album is done recording. Then you're going to want to pull out where it is, get your scissors, and cut it. Say you just finished recording. It should look like this, where most of the tape is on the right, unless you recorded 20 minutes onto a 60-minute cassette, in which there will be more tape on the other side. If you don't have screws on these, it's not impossible to splice. You can just grab it and pull out all the tape yourself. If you have these screws, you can just unscrew them, take it off, take the remaining spool out, dump it out, put it back together. But importantly, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut the previously spliced part of the tape off and splice it now, this magnetic part, to the clear tape that is on the end of the tape. To do this, you are going to need splicing tape. Do not use Scotch tape or anything like that. It will just corrode over time and destroy whatever tape deck you have it in. And here's a nifty little tool that you can get called a splicing block. It's just a really nice little piece of metal that'll hold the tape together so you don't have to try to be really finicky like I did with my first release. Here's an important little thing right here. You've got the tape here. It is currently face up. You're going to want to flip it to where you are taping this side, not this side, but this side of the tape. You're going to take it and push it into this little block, line it up, and then kind of fold it in there. Once that's done, you're going to want to do the same thing to the other side of the tape. Push it into there. And you're going to take a razor and push it into this little hole where it will cut it. Once you have spliced it as such, you're going to want to take out the little piece that you just cut off of this one, and then you are going to want to tape together these two pieces like so. And there you have it. You have some spliced audio tape right there. And once you're done, you can just re-spool it. Now obviously what I did right there was I just spliced the part that had already been spliced just to give you an example. In reality, you're going to pull out everything you don't want and then cut it at the very end of that and then splice it to where you ended the album off with that extra 5 to 10 seconds. Now this is obviously very tedious. You're only going to want to do this if you have a very short amount of cassettes. If not, it's fine to put an extra 10 to 20 seconds at the end of an album just because you didn't want to splice it. If you're doing that, just go ahead and buy cassettes that are already the right length. If you're doing home cassettes like this, that's fine because you're probably only going to make 1 or 2 or 3. Now once you've spliced it, then you can go and record the B side because now it's going to be the proper length. However, it is important to note that you know which side is the longest side, because if the B side is longer than the A side, then you're going to want to record the B side first and then record the A side, or else the B side is going to be too short for you to record on. In a case like this, that'll be what happens. You want to record the longest side first, take your tape out, splice it, and then record the shortest side, no matter which one is the B or the A side. Once you have all your tapes recorded and spliced, then you're going to want to take the tape off, first of all, of the top of these tapes, and then you're going to want to go to somewhere like FedEx, or what people used to call Kinko's, and get your J cards printed out there. I will put a template to J cards in the description of the video. And on these J cards, so they call them, you're going to want to have a track listing, you're going to want to have a spine with the title, and you're going to want to have a cover, of course. Now some people will do sort of an insert kind of one where there's an extra kind of square at the end which they just fold in half, so that way it's not just like, as you can see over here, so it's not just like a white paper background. Take your J cards, you cut them up to size, you fold them into there. There are millions of ways of folding up your J cards. Just find the one that works best for you. Make like 35 if you're going to make 25 tapes. Make like 10 more J cards just in case, because you don't want to have to make an extra trip. A very important thing you're going to want to include with your releases is a download code. You're going to want a download code because that's like the reason why most people do buy cassettes. It's because they do come with a way to where they can digitally download the album. Without it, most people don't really listen to the cassettes when they buy them, at least in the indie scene. They just want to collect them. Obviously, if you have your sticker labels, you just put them on there like a regular sticker. I don't think you need a tutorial for how to use stickers. Test it as much as you like, do different volume levels, whatever you need to do, as long as you get the best quality outcome. Now, it doesn't really take a genius here to tell you that this wasn't made all that well. It's not the right length, it's too short, it's been very cheaply printed out on printer paper. It doesn't look great, it's been cut very poorly. There's no design or anything on here, it's just been very cheaply written on with the A and B. Here you have a decent cassette release. It's printed out nicely, it's put together well. You've got download codes, you've got everything you need, you've got stickers. There's no backside to that, there's no writing on the cassette, and it also hasn't been spliced or even rewound, as you can see from here. Over here you can see a decent cassette release, but it's pretty obvious that this was not DIY made. This was sourced to a company who did a screen printing on the cassette. You can also get a little bit creative with your releases, like this one I did for my very first tape. Here I did a, like I said earlier, a reverse stencil. I took some paint that I mixed and flicked it on with a toothbrush with a reverse stencil on both here, and covering these sides. Here is my favorite release that I've done so far, given that it's only been 2. Printed out the J cards with a proper kind of photo paper. Got a sticker label for the cassette here, and it's printed out nicely. What I like to do with my releases is I include a little note to the purchaser, because I want them to feel like they are appreciated and that they will hopefully support the label more in the future, because I do appreciate everybody that purchases one of our cassettes, so I include a little handwritten note to everybody. If you are the artist and you're making your own cassettes, sign the cassettes. That will make them so much more interested in you as an artist. They will feel a connection towards you and they will want to support you more in the future. Over here you have a good cassette release. You did alternate album artwork, simple little label printed out. It even has the side A, side B difference. I just threw it. It's nice, it's well put together. Over here you have good aesthetics meeting a good creative thing. So what they did is they spray painted this one with black paint, so it gives it a really unique matte finish, which I've actually never seen on a cassette other than this one. And they've got this really interesting sticker here. They opted for no artist name or side A or side B or anything. It's pretty obvious that this is the side A, given that this is the unique one. The more plain one is usually given to the back one, but still a pretty great release, I could say. And then over here you've got a wonderful cassette release. You've got alternate album artwork from the original artist. You've got a creative backside. It's actually not folded over, it's double sided. It's been printed on a very thick, durable paper here with like extra artwork for the artist. You've got a side A sticker and a side B sticker. That's the inverse. It's all very well put together, and shout out to No Time Records for this one. All in all, the most important thing with this is experience. Just do it enough and you will kind of understand it. It's okay if your first release is like this. No one's gonna ruin your life because of this. But if your first release can be something pretty decent like this, then that's a great starting point. Eventually you can make great cassettes like No Time Records. Let me know if you have any other questions or stuff that I forgot to cover here, and I will try to help you out as much as I can. Thank you so much.